For 5 long years, Susan devoted her life to her son Ryan and his wife Martha. What began as kindness slowly became servitude. Cooking every meal, cleaning their house, hosting their parties, all while Martha took full credit for being the perfect hostess. Whenever Susan tried to rest, she heard the same line. "Oh, Mom, you love helping the family. That's what good mothers do." But when she finally refused to host yet another grand Christmas dinner, her daughter-in-law exploded, calling her manipulative, selfish, even accusing her of emotional blackmail. That single phrase ignited something in Susan that had slept for years. If they wanted to see manipulation, she would show them how a real strategist plays. "Perfect," I told my daughter-in-law Martha when she announced that 25 members of her family would be spending Christmas at my house. "I'm going on vacation. You can cook and clean. I'm not your maid." Her face went pale, as if she had just seen a ghost. But what she didn't know was that the real surprise was only beginning. "My name is Susan, I'm 66 years old, and for the last 5 years, I've been treated like the servant in my own home. It all began when my son Ryan married that woman. From the very first day, Martha decided I was her personal housekeeper. Susan, bring me coffee. Susan, clean this. Susan, cook for my guests." And I, like a fool, always obeyed. I believed that keeping the peace would hold my family together. But I had finally reached my limit. That December Tuesday, Martha walked into my kitchen as she always did, without knocking. With that fake smile I'd grown to hate, she wore an expensive red dress that she had probably paid for with my son's money. Her heels clicked against the ceramic floor like hammers pounding on my patience. "Susan," she said in that condescending tone she reserved for me, "I have wonderful news. My whole family is coming here for Christmas. It's just 25 people. Just 25 people. As if that were nothing, as if I were some kind of machine built to cook and clean." I saw the malicious sparkle in her eyes as she continued with her master plan. She sat down in my kitchen chair, crossed her legs, and started listing names as if she were reading a grocery list. "I've already talked to my sister Grace, my cousin Evelyn, my brother-in-law Henry, my uncle Elias. They're all coming. Also my nephews, my second cousins, Grace's kids. It'll be the perfect Christmas." She paused dramatically, waiting for my usual panicked reaction. "Of course," she continued. "You'll handle everything, the food, the cleaning, the table service." Her words hit me like slaps. I remembered every time I had cooked dinner for her friends while she took all the credit. Every time I had cleaned up after her parties while she slept until noon. Every time I had been invisible in my own home. "We'll need at least 3 turkeys," she said, ignoring my silence. "And that chocolate dessert you make too. Oh, and you'll have to decorate the whole house. I want it to look perfect for Instagram photos." She waited for my typical, "Yes, Martha." But this time was different. Something inside me had broken, for good. I looked her straight in the eyes, with a calm that even surprised me. "Perfect," I repeated, watching her smile begin to fade. "It'll be a perfect Christmas for you all. Because I won't be here." The silence that followed was deafening. Martha blinked several times, as if she hadn't heard me correctly. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. The clicking of her heels stopped abruptly. "What do you mean you won't be here?" she finally managed, her voice trembling slightly. She straightened in her chair, her perfect posture beginning to crumble. "Exactly what you heard," I said. "I'm going on vacation. You can cook, clean, and serve yourselves. I'm not your maid." I watched the color drain from her face completely. Her hands began to tremble, and the coffee cup she was holding rattled against the saucer. For the first time in 5 years, Martha didn't know what to say. But Susan," she stammered, "I already told everyone to come. Everything's planned. You can't do this." "Of course I can," I replied. "This is my house." Those 4 words fell like a bomb in the middle of the kitchen. Martha stood frozen, her expression turning from shock to fury in seconds. She jumped up, her heels clicking again, this time in desperation. "This is ridiculous. Ryan won't allow this. Ryan can say whatever he wants, I said, but the decision is made. For the first time I was the one in control. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that my decision hadn't been spontaneous. I had been planning this for months. And I had my reasons. Reasons that would soon leave them all speechless. Martha's expression shifted from disbelief to rage in a heartbeat. Her cheeks flushed red, and her eyes narrowed like a snake ready to strike. She stepped closer, invading my personal space, as she always did when she wanted to intimidate me. You know what, Susan? I always knew you were selfish. But this is the limit. Her voice dripped with venom, each word heavy with contempt. My family is coming from far away, some from other countries. And you're going to ruin their Christmas over a whim. A whim. 5 years of mistreatment, humiliation, and emotional abuse. And she called it a whim. I felt anger rising in my chest, but I stayed composed. I had learned to control my emotions after so many years of being her victim. That's not my problem, I said calmly, unsettling her even more. You should have asked me before inviting 25 people to my house. Our house, she shouted, completely losing her composure. Ryan is your son. This house will be ours one day. There it was, the truth that had always floated in the air but had never been spoken aloud. Martha didn't see me as family. She saw me as a temporary obstacle before inheriting everything I had built through years of work and sacrifice. Interesting perspective, I murmured, watching her pupils widen in panic as she realized what she had just revealed. Very interesting. Just then I heard the keys in the front door. Ryan had arrived from work. Martha ran to him like a child about to complain to her father, her heels clacking on the floor in desperate rhythm. Ryan, your mother has lost her mind. She says she's not going to help with Christmas. She says she's going on vacation and leaving us alone with all my family. I heard their muffled voices from the living room, Martha talking fast and dramatically, Ryan answering in low, tired murmurs I couldn't make out. After a few minutes, I heard their footsteps approaching the kitchen. My son appeared in the doorway, his suit wrinkled after a long day at the office, his face tired but annoyed. Behind him, Martha followed like a shadow, arms crossed, wearing a triumphant smirk. Clearly, she expected him to put me in my place. Mom, Ryan began, with that paternal tone he had adopted since his marriage. Martha told me about your decision. Don't you think you're being a little dramatic? Dramatic? My own son was calling me dramatic for refusing to be his wife's maid. Something cold and heavy settled in my stomach. Something that had been growing inside me for months finally solidified in that moment. No, Ryan, I said firmly. I'm not being dramatic. I'm being clear. But Mom, it's Christmas, a family holiday. Martha already invited everyone. We can't cancel now. I didn't say you had to cancel, I replied. I said I won't be here. Martha stepped forward, positioning herself between Ryan and me like a human shield. See? Do you see what I mean? She cried. She's completely irrational. What are my relatives going to think? What am I supposed to tell them? Tell them the truth, I said calmly. That you assumed I'd be your maid without asking, and that you were wrong. Ryan sighed, rubbing his forehead the way he did when he was frustrated. Mom, be reasonable. You know Martha can't cook for 25 people by herself. Why not? Yes. I've been cooking for her parties for years. It's time she learned. But I work. Martha protested. I can't take days off to cook. My career is important. Her career. A part-time position at a boutique that she probably got through Ryan's connections. But of course her career was more important than my time, my energy, and my dignity. Then hire a catering service, I suggested with a sweet smile. There are plenty of great options in the city. Catering costs a fortune, Ryan exclaimed. Why spend thousands of dollars when you can? He stopped abruptly, realizing what he was about to say. When you can do it for free. Like always. Like the maid you think I am. Silence spread between us like a crack slowly widening through stone. Martha and Ryan exchanged nervous glances. I could almost see the gears turning in their heads, trying to find a way to manipulate me into giving in. "Look, Mom," Ryan said finally, softening his tone. "I know you've been a little sensitive lately. Maybe you're going through some hormonal changes." Hormonal changes? Seriously? He was reducing me to a hysterical, menopausal woman. The fury I'd been holding back began to simmer beneath the surface, but I managed to keep my voice steady. "There's nothing hormonal about this, Ryan. It's about something very simple: respect. And for 5 years, neither you nor your wife have shown me any." "That's not true," Martha protested. "We've always treated you well. You're part of the family. Part of the family that cooks, cleans, and serves while you all have fun. Part of the family who's never consulted, only expected to obey." Ryan stepped closer and placed his hand on my shoulder, the same way he used to when he was a boy and wanted something. But he wasn't that sweet child anymore. He was a man who had chosen his wife over his mother in every conflict of the past 5 years. "All right, Mom," he said, trying to sound calm. "I understand that you're upset, but think about it. It's only 1 week. After Christmas, everything goes back to normal." Normal. They're normal, where I was invisible except when they needed something, where my feelings didn't matter as long as their lives stayed comfortable, where my home had stopped being my refuge and had turned into their personal hotel. "No, Ryan," I said firmly. "Things are not going back to normal because I'm leaving tomorrow." They both froze. Martha was the first to react, her voice rising an octave. "Tomorrow." "Tomorrow," I confirmed, savoring the panic starting to flash in her eyes. "I already have everything arranged." What they didn't know was that I truly did have everything arranged, just not in the way they thought. "This is insane," Martha shouted, her eyes wide as she paced back and forth across my kitchen like a trapped animal. "You can't leave tomorrow. That's impossible. My family arrives in 3 days." "Well," I said calmly, rinsing my coffee cup as if we were discussing the weather, "you should have thought of that before assuming I'd be your maid." Every movement was deliberate, meant to show that her dramatic performance didn't rattle me. Ryan just stood there, shifting uneasily from one foot to the other, clearly torn between supporting his frantic wife and trying to reason with me. His eyes darted between us like a spectator watching a tense tennis match. "Mom, please," he murmured finally. "At least tell us where you're going. When will you be back?" "I'm going to visit my sister in Miami," I lied smoothly. "I'll be back after New Year's." The lie came so naturally that it even surprised me, but it was necessary. They couldn't know my real plans. Not yet. After New Year's. Martha practically choked on her own words. But what are we supposed to do? I already told everyone they could come. My Uncle Elias already bought plane tickets from Colombia. Grace cancelled her plans. Evelyn took time off from work. "Those are your problems, not mine," I said. I watched as the desperation on Martha's face began to replace her anger. Her perfectly manicured hands trembled as she clutched the marble countertop, her knuckles white from the pressure. "Susan," her voice changed suddenly, syrupy and manipulative. "You know I've always considered you like a second mother. You're so important to me. To us. You can't just abandon us like this." There was the shift in tactics. From rage to emotional manipulation. I had seen this play so many times before, but it no longer worked on me. "If you really considered me like a mother," I replied coldly, "you wouldn't treat me like a servant." "But I don't treat you like a servant," she said quickly. "I just thought you enjoyed cooking for the family. I thought you liked feeling useful." Useful. That word cut through me like a knife. For 5 years, I had believed that being useful was my way to keep peace, to ensure I still had a place in my son's life. But now I understood that being useful had only turned me into a shadow in my own home. "You know what, Martha? You're right," I said. "I do like feeling useful. That's why, for the first time in years, I'm going to be useful for myself." Ryan stepped in again, frustration etched into every line of his face. "Mom, this isn't fair. You know we don't have the money to hire a catering service for 25 people. The deposit for the new apartment wiped out our savings. New apartment. It was the first time I had heard about a new apartment. My eyes narrowed as I processed the information. Since when had they been planning to move? And why hadn't they told me? What new apartment? I asked, my voice filled with dangerous curiosity. Martha and Ryan exchanged a guilty glance, the kind you share when you've just revealed something that was supposed to stay secret. Well, Ryan began, staring down at his shoes, we were going to tell you after the holidays. We found an amazing place downtown. 3 bedrooms, ocean view, gym in the building. Sounds expensive, I said, keeping my tone neutral even though my mind was racing. Well, yes, he admitted, but it's worth the investment. Don't worry, we're not moving far. Only 30 minutes away. 30 minutes. Close enough to keep using my house as their personal restaurant, but far enough to enjoy their privacy. How convenient. And how exactly do you plan to pay for it? I asked, though I already had a suspicion about the answer. Martha's face suddenly lit up, as if she had just found the perfect solution to all their problems. That's why this Christmas needs to be perfect, she exclaimed. My uncle Elias is very generous when he's impressed, and my brother-in-law Henry has real estate connections. If everything goes well, they could help us with Ryan's business. And there it was, the real reason behind the grand Christmas celebration. It wasn't about family or tradition. It was about money. About impressing wealthy relatives to get favors and financial help. And I was the key piece in their manipulative little plan. I see, I murmured, letting the silence stretch while they waited for my reaction. So, you need your perfect Christmas to impress the rich relatives. Exactly, Martha said, relieved that I finally understood. I knew you'd get it. You're so smart, Susan. You always know what's right. What's right? For 5 years, what was right had meant sacrificing my comfort, my time, and my dignity to make their lives easier. But now I had a completely different idea of what was right. You're right, Martha, I said softly. I know exactly what's right. That's why my decision stands. I'm leaving tomorrow. Hope drained from their faces like water spilling from a glass. Martha's breathing quickened, teetering on the edge of a panic attack. You can't do this. You can't ruin our future over a tantrum. This isn't a tantrum, I replied calmly. It's a well-thought-out decision. But what will my relatives think when they arrive and no one's here to greet them? What will they think when they see there's no food prepared? They'll think, I said evenly, that their niece invited them without having the ability to be a proper hostess, and they'll be absolutely right. He came closer, his desperation now palpable. Mom, please. If you really need a vacation, we can postpone it. After New Year's, you can go wherever you want for as long as you want. We'll pay for the trip, the hotel, everything. They'd pay for the trip. With what money, I wondered. They had just said the apartment deposit had drained their savings. But it didn't matter. Their offer came 5 years too late. The offer is tempting, Ryan, I said. But I've already made my decision. This is emotional blackmail. Martha exploded, her mask of sweetness finally shattering completely. You're using our situation to manipulate us. Emotional blackmail. The words hung in the air like an accidental confession. Because if refusing to be their unpaid maid was my version of emotional blackmail, what had they been doing to me for the past 5 years? You know what emotional blackmail is, Martha? I said coldly. It's making me feel guilty every time I don't want to cook for your friends. It's telling me that a good mother-in-law always puts family first whenever I refuse to clean up after your parties. It's assuming my plans don't matter because I'm retired and don't have anything better to do. Every word hit like a bullet. I saw both of them flinch slightly with each accusation, because they knew it was true. All of it was true. That's not the same, Martha stammered. But her voice had lost all its former power. You're right, I said. It's not the same because what you've done is far worse. You've taken my generosity for granted for years. The kitchen fell into tense silence. I could hear the ticking of the wall clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the uneven breathing of Martha. But the loudest sound was the one inside me, the sound of my freedom approaching step by step. Because tomorrow everything would change. And they had no idea how much. That night, while Martha and Ryan whispered desperately in the living room, I locked myself in my bedroom and opened my laptop. It was time to set the second phase of my plan in motion, a plan that had been forming for months, ever since I discovered something that changed everything I thought I knew about my dear daughter-in-law. 3 months earlier, while cleaning Ryan's office like a fool, I had found a forgotten folder among his papers. A folder full of bank statements, printed emails, and legal documents. At first, I thought they were just work files, but something caught my eye. Martha's name appeared again and again in transactions I didn't understand. That night, after they went to bed, I went back into the office and examined everything carefully. What I found chilled me to the bone. Martha had been spending money they didn't have. A lot of money. Credit cards in Ryan's name that he didn't even know existed. Personal loans using the house as collateral, and compulsive shopping sprees in luxury stores that totaled more than $50,000 in debt. But that wasn't all. I also found emails between Martha and her friends where she discussed how to handle Ryan so he wouldn't notice her spending, how to keep him distracted while she kept buying. And the most disturbing of all, a chain of messages where she planned to convince him to sell the house to invest in their future together. My house. The house where I had lived for 30 years. The house I had paid for with my own work, my own savings, my own sacrifices. Martha wanted Ryan to sell it to pay off her shopping debts. That night I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake until dawn, processing the betrayal, the manipulation, the deceit. But along with the devastation, something else began to grow. A cold, deliberate determination to protect myself. The next day, I began my own quiet investigation. I hired a private detective, a discreet man my lawyer had recommended years ago. I asked him to trace all of Martha's financial activities. What he discovered was worse than I'd imagined. Not only had she been spending compulsively, but she'd also been lying about her job. Her important career at the boutique was part-time, and she barely made minimum wage. Yet she had been telling Ryan that she earned 3 times that amount. Where did the extra money for her personal expenses come from? From the secret credit cards, of course. And there was more. Martha had been telling her relatives that we were far wealthier than we really were. She told them that Ryan ran a successful business, that I had a considerable fortune, that our house was worth twice its actual value. All lies. Carefully crafted to maintain her image as a well-married, successful woman. Now, as I stared at the glow of my laptop in the silent darkness of my bedroom, I smiled for the first time in months, because I had already taken steps they couldn't even imagine. First, I moved all my savings into a new account at a different bank, one that Ryan didn't know existed and would never have access to. Then I met with my lawyer to learn how to legally protect the ownership of the house. It turned out there were very effective legal ways to ensure no one could ever force me to sell it. But my masterstroke had been contacting Martha's family directly. Not all of them, just the ones who truly mattered. Her uncle Elias, the successful businessman from Colombia. Her brother-in-law Henry, the real estate agent who was supposedly going to help them. Her sister Grace, who worked in finance and had an impeccable reputation in the family. I had sent them all very polite emails, presenting myself as the concerned mother-in-law, worried about Martha's delicate financial situation. And of course I had accidentally attached a few of the most alarming bank statements I had found. The responses came quickly. Elias was furious about being deceived regarding Martha's real situation. Henry immediately cancelled any plans for financial assistance. Grace was so angry she threatened to personally step in and set her little sister straight. But best of all, none of them had told Martha a thing. They were all waiting for the Christmas gathering to confront her in person. A gathering that now wouldn't have the hostess they were expecting, nor the dinner they'd been promised, nor the festive atmosphere Martha had painted in her web of lies. My phone vibrated with a text message. It was from Elias. Mrs. Susan, after reviewing the documents you sent us, My family and I have decided to arrive a day earlier than planned. We'd like to speak with Martha about some important matters before the celebration. Would it be possible to receive us on the morning of the 23rd? The morning of the 23rd. Exactly when I would be packing my suitcase for my trip to Miami. What a perfect coincidence of fate. I replied quickly. Of course, Elias. It will be a pleasure to welcome you. Though I should let you know, I'll be leaving for my trip that same day, so Martha and Ryan will be your hosts. His reply came within seconds. Perfect. That will be exactly what we need. I closed my laptop and lay back on my bed, smiling into the darkness. For 5 years I had been the silent victim, the submissive mother-in-law, the unpaid housemaid. But all that time I had been watching, learning, understanding how my beloved in-laws truly operated. Martha thought she was so clever, so manipulative, so cunning, but she had gravely underestimated the older woman who cleaned up her messes. She had assumed my age and apparent gentleness meant helplessness. Tomorrow morning, while she was still asleep, I would be packing my bags. Not for Miami as I'd told them, but for a luxury hotel just an hour away, where I had booked a suite overlooking the ocean for the next 2 weeks. From there, I would have a front-row seat to the collapse of the little kingdom of lies that Martha had built. I would watch as her family uncovered her deceit. I would watch as Ryan finally opened his eyes to the woman he had married. I would watch as her carefully constructed world crumbled piece by piece. And the best part, I wouldn't have to lift a single finger to make it happen. Martha had dug her own grave with years of lies and manipulation. I had merely taken the shovel from her hands and shown her family where to look. Outside, I could hear their argument in the living room finally ending. Footsteps on the stairs, doors closing, the tense silence of a house full of unresolved conflict. But I slept soundly that night. For the first time in 5 years, I slept with the smile of someone who knows that justice, though late, always arrives. At 6 in the morning, my alarm rang like the song of freedom. I woke up with an energy I hadn't felt in years. I showered calmly and began packing my suitcases. Each folded garment was a step toward independence. Each item I placed inside was a silent declaration that I was no one's servant anymore. Martha and Ryan were still asleep. I could hear their deep breathing from the hallway as I carried my bags down the stairs. On the kitchen table, I left a short but precise note beside the spare keys. I've decided to leave earlier than planned. The house is in your hands. Enjoy your perfect Christmas. Susan. What the note didn't mention was that I had made some additional preparations before leaving, such as completely emptying the pantry and the refrigerator. After all, if they were going to host 25 people, they would need to learn how to handle grocery shopping themselves. I had also locked away all my fine china, elegant tablecloths, and Christmas decorations in my bedroom. If they wanted to impress the wealthy relatives, they'd have to find their own supplies. But my final touch was canceling the cleaning service that came twice a week, the one I had paid for all these years, though Martha always took the credit for keeping the house spotless. From now on, she could experience what it really meant to maintain a home on her own. The taxi arrived promptly at 7 a.m. As the driver loaded my bags, I took one last look at the house where I had lived for 3 decades. A house that had once been my refuge, then my prison, and now, once again, my fortress. Because even though I was leaving temporarily, it was still my house. And I fully intended to reclaim it. The hotel was everything I had dreamed of during those years of forced servitude. A spacious suite with an ocean view, 24-hour room service. And most importantly, absolute silence. No one shouting from the kitchen. No one expecting me to appear with fresh coffee. No one assuming my time had no value. Everything was planned to perfection. I knew Martha wouldn't wake up until 10, just like every weekend. By then, I would already be settled in my suite, eating a breakfast I hadn't had to cook, watching the morning news uninterrupted. My phone rang at 10:47 a.m. Of course it was Ryan. "Mom, where are you? We found your note. But why did you leave earlier?" His voice sounded confused, still sleepy. He had probably just discovered that the pantry was empty and there was no one to make his weekend breakfast. "Good morning, Ryan," I said cheerfully. I decided there was no reason to delay the inevitable. You two have a lot to do to get ready, and I'm looking forward to some rest. But, Mom, this is so sudden. Martha is. Well, she's really upset. Upset. What a diplomatic way to say she was having a full-blown panic attack at the realization that she'd actually have to manage her own life. "I'm sure she'll be fine," I said calmly. "After all, she's a very capable woman." There was a long pause. I could hear muffled voices in the background. Martha speaking rapidly, her tone hysterical. "Could you at least tell us where you are? In case of emergency." "I'm safe and well taken care of," I replied evenly. "That's all you need to know." "Mom, please," he said. "I know you're upset, but this is extreme. Martha's family arrives in 2 days and we don't know how." "Ryan," I interrupted firmly. "You're 32 years old. Martha is 29. You're both fully capable adults. I'm sure you can handle your own problems without depending on a 66-year-old woman." Another pause, longer this time. "All right," he sighed finally. "But promise me you'll be okay. When are you coming back?" "I'll come back when I'm ready. Enjoy your Christmas." I hung up before he could continue, then immediately put my phone on silent mode. I knew the next few hours would bring a barrage of desperate calls and messages, but I had waited 5 years for this moment of peace. I wasn't about to let anyone take it away. From my suite window, I could see the ocean stretching endlessly toward the horizon. The waves broke softly against the shore, hypnotic and calm. For the first time in years, there was no mental to-do list, no meals to cook, no tables to clean, only the present moment and my newly claimed freedom. I ordered lunch from room service. Lobster thermidor, something I had never cooked for myself because it would have seemed too extravagant by the standards of austerity Martha had imposed in my own home. The meal arrived on an elegant cart, served on fine china, with a fresh rose in a small vase. As I ate slowly, savoring each bite, my phone screen flickered with muted notifications. I could imagine the growing chaos at home, the realization that they would actually have to buy groceries, plan menus, clean the house, and do it all without their reliable maid. But the best part was yet to come. Because tomorrow morning, exactly as I had calculated, Martha's family would start arriving. And they wouldn't find the perfect Christmas she had promised them. Instead, they would find the harsh truth about who she really was. A woman who had lived for years off lies. At 3 in the afternoon, I finally checked my messages. There were 17 missed calls from Ryan, 31 from Martha, and a flood of text messages that escalated from confusion to pleading to outrage. But the message that truly caught my attention arrived at noon. From Elias. "Mrs. Susan, my family and I will arrive tomorrow at 8 a.m. as agreed. We look forward to meeting you in person and having that important conversation with Martha. Thank you for your hospitality." Hospitality. If only he knew that by 8 a.m. the next day, the only hospitality they'd encounter would be Martha frantically trying to explain why the house was empty, why there was no prepared food, and why the generous mother-in-law she had bragged so much about had mysteriously vanished. I typed back quickly. "I'm sorry to inform you that I had to leave earlier than planned due to unexpected family commitments. Martha and Ryan will be delighted to receive you. I'm sure you'll have plenty to discuss." His reply came almost instantly. "I completely understand. In fact, that might be better. Some conversations are best had in private." Private. Exactly what they needed. A private conversation between a woman who had been lying for years and a family who finally knew the truth about her financial deceptions. That afternoon, while enjoying a massage at the hotel spa, I allowed myself to imagine the scene that would unfold the next morning. Martha and Ryan waking up in panic, rushing last minute to the supermarket, desperately trying to create the illusion of hospitality they had promised. And then, at exactly 8 o'clock, the sound of the doorbell announcing the arrival of the family who had come to settle long overdue accounts. I couldn't help but smile as the masseuse worked through the knots of tension that had lived in my shoulders for 5 years, knots that were finally unraveling one by one, just like Martha's lies. December 23rd dawned under a clear sky, and with my phone exploding in calls. I had slept deeply but woke up to the first call from Ryan at 6:30 a.m. I didn't answer. At 6:45 it was Martha. Then Ryan again. Then Martha. A desperate cycle that amused me far more than it should have. As I calmly enjoyed Eggs Benedict with smoked salmon on my balcony, I decided to listen to the growing pile of voicemail messages. The first was from Ryan, clearly recorded while driving in a panic. "Mom, please answer. Martha's hysterical. We don't know what to make for breakfast for 25 people. The supermarket doesn't open until 8, and her family arrives at 8. We need help, please call us." The second message was from Martha, and her voice was completely broken. "Susan, I know you're angry with me, and I understand why. But please don't make me look bad in front of my family. They've traveled so far. My uncle Elias came all the way from Colombia. Grace canceled important plans. I don't know how to cook for so many people. I don't even know where to start. I promise we'll talk and fix everything later, but right now I need your help. Desperately." Interesting. For the first time in 5 years, Martha was admitting that she needed me. For the first time, it wasn't a command disguised as a request. It was a genuine plea. But it had come far too late. The third message was even better. Martha again, but now sobbing. "Susan, I just checked the pantry and the refrigerator. They're both empty. Why is there nothing? How am I supposed to feed my family? Where's the good china? Where are the Christmas tablecloths? Please at least tell me where you put everything. Just that, please." Ah yes, the realization that maintaining a household requires planning, effort, and real money. The late understanding that food doesn't magically appear in fridges, that tables don't set themselves, and that decorations don't install by sheer willpower. But the message I was truly waiting for came at 7:15 a.m. It was a man's voice I didn't recognize. Calm, authoritative. "Mrs. Susan, this is Elias, Martha's uncle. We arrived early at the airport and decided to come directly to your home. We expect to be there in about 15 minutes. I'm very much looking forward to meeting you and having that conversation we've been planning." Perfect. They would arrive exactly when Martha and Ryan were in full panic mode. With an empty house, no food, no preparations, and no magical mother-in-law to save the day. At 8:20 a.m. my phone rang again. This time I answered. "Mom." Ryan's voice trembled, on the verge of a breakdown. "Can you talk?" "Good morning, Ryan," I said serenely. "Of course I can talk. How's your morning going?" "Mom, please don't do this. Martha's family just arrived, and we have nothing to offer them. Literally nothing. Martha's crying in the bathroom, and I don't know what to do." "Did you explain the situation to them?" "Yes." "What situation? How am I supposed to explain that my mother decided to go on vacation right when we needed her the most? When they needed me the most? Not when I needed respect or understanding or even a simple thank you for 5 years of service. Only when they needed me." "Tell them the truth, Ryan," I said evenly. "Tell them that for 5 years, you both took for granted that I would be your unpaid housemaid, and that I finally decided I deserved a vacation. Mom, they don't speak Spanish very well. I can't explain something that complicated." "Then find a translator," I said dryly, "or learn to communicate better. I'm sure you'll figure it out." I could hear background noise. Multiple voices, a mix of panic and confusion. Someone speaking in Spanish with a stern tone. Probably Elias, demanding to know where the hostess was. "At least tell us where you used to buy the food," Ryan begged. "What did you usually cook for special occasions? Anything would help." "Ryan," I said, "I didn't just buy food. I planned weeks in advance, researched recipes, made detailed lists, compared prices, and spent days preparing everything. It wasn't magic. It was work, a lot of work." The silence on the other end told me he was finally beginning to grasp the magnitude of what he had ignored for years. "Look," he said at last, his voice smaller. "I know we've been inconsiderate, but right now I need practical solutions. What do I do with 25 hungry people in my living room? Order takeout. Call restaurants. Go to the supermarket. Do what every responsible adult does when they have guests. But it's Christmas. Everything's closed or packed. The restaurants are full. Well, I said calmly, maybe you should have thought of that before inviting 25 people without consulting the person you expected to do all the work. At that moment, I heard a new voice in the background, speaking sharply in Spanish. Elias, no doubt, demanding answers about what was going on. Mom, Ryan said quickly, Martha's uncle wants to talk to you. He says he needs to understand what's happening here. I'd love to talk to him, I replied sweetly, but I'm on vacation. Tell him Martha can explain everything perfectly. After all, she's the one who organized this gathering. Please, Mom, just 5 minutes. He's confused and a little upset. I think he might be able to help us fix this. Us. Always about helping them. Never about what I needed, what I deserved, or how they had made me feel for years. Ryan, listen carefully, I said firmly. For 5 years, every time you needed something, I was there. Every time Martha wanted to impress someone, I did the work. Every time you had a problem, I was the solution. Today, for the first time in half a decade, you two will solve your own problems. And that's not my responsibility. But it's your family, he shouted, finally losing his composure. It's your grandson who'll be embarrassed. Grandson. Ah, there it was, the ultimate emotional weapon. But there was just one problem with his logic. What grandson, Ryan? The question dropped like a bomb. A long, tense silence followed. Well, in the future, when Martha and I. There's the problem, I thought, and smiled. All their talk was about future plans. Vague promises, expectations I was supposed to fulfill based on possibilities, yet never once had they considered what I needed now. At that moment, I could clearly hear Elias's voice speaking in English, addressing Ryan. Young man, I don't understand. What kind of family gathering is this? Where is the woman of the house? Where is the grandmother who invited us? The woman of the house. The grandmother who had supposedly invited them. Elias had obviously believed, based on Martha's stories, that I was the matriarch who organized these family events, the main hostess, the woman responsible for all the hospitality. And now there was no one. Only 2 confused adults finally facing the consequences of their own decisions. Mom, please, Ryan begged. At least talk to him. Explain there's been a misunderstanding. There is no misunderstanding, Ryan, I said firmly. There's a reality you both refuse to see for years, and that reality is simple. Without mutual respect, there is no functional family. Then I hung up. This time I turned my phone off completely. It was time for phase 2 of my plan. After shutting off my phone, I headed to the hotel's business center. It was time to implement the most delicious part of my plan. I sat down at one of the computers and opened my email. Several new messages awaited me. All from Martha's family, all received within the past 2 hours. The first was from Grace, the financially responsible sister. Dear Susan, we just arrived at your home, and the situation is quite confusing. Martha told us you had to leave unexpectedly, but we don't understand why the house seems abandoned. There's no food, no Christmas preparations, and frankly, Martha's behavior is very strange. Could we speak by phone? The second was from Elias, and his tone was much more serious. Mrs. Susan, I respect that you had to travel for an emergency, but I need to understand what is happening in this house. Martha cannot coherently explain where the promised food is, why there are no decorations, or even why she didn't know you wouldn't be here. None of this matches the picture she painted for us. Please contact me urgently. Perfect. It was exactly the opening I had been waiting for. I replied to both with a carefully crafted message. Dear Elias and Grace, I'm deeply sorry for the confusion. I was forced to leave earlier due to circumstances I'd rather not discuss over email. However, I believe it's important that you understand the true situation with Martha and Ryan before continuing with the holiday plans. The documents I previously sent represent only part of the financial reality. If you truly wish to help Martha, I suggest having a very honest conversation with her about her spending habits and her unrealistic expectations of family support. Warm regards, Susan. I sent it and waited. I didn't have to wait long. 20 minutes later, the hotel phone rang. It was the front desk. Ma'am, you have a long-distance call. A Mr. Elias says it's urgent. Put him through, please. Elias's voice came through the line, tense but composed. Mrs. Susan, thank you for taking my call. I need to ask you some direct questions about my niece. Of course, Elias, I said calmly. I'm all ears. First, is it true that Martha has been asking you to cook and clean for all her family gatherings? That's correct. For the past 5 years, every time you've come over, or when she's hosted guests, I've handled all the preparations. And when she told us about those elegant dinners and perfect events, was she the one organizing them, or were you? I planned everything from scratch, I said simply. Martha took the credit. There was a long silence. I could hear voices in the background, Elias clearly speaking sharply to someone in Spanish. Second question, he continued, his tone cooler. The financial statements you sent us, are they real? Completely real, I replied. I obtained them directly from my son's personal files. And does Martha know that you discovered her debts? No. Until today, she had no idea I knew about her secret spending or her lies about her income. I see, he said, his voice now cold as ice. One more question. Why did you decide to leave now of all times? Because I'm tired of being treated like a housemaid in my own home. Martha assumed I'd cook for 25 people without even asking if I was available or willing. Another long, heavy silence followed. Then Elias spoke again. His voice laced with disappointment and restrained anger. Mrs. Susan, my family owes you an apology. Martha has been lying to us for years. She painted a picture of you all as a prosperous family where she was the perfect organizer. She asked for financial help to expand Ryan's business, when apparently, that money was meant to pay off her shopping debts. I'm afraid that's true, I said quietly. And like fools, we were ready to help her, because we believed she had proven herself responsible and successful, when in reality, you were the one keeping everything afloat while she took the credit. I didn't expect you to find out the truth, I admitted. Well, now we know it, he said sharply. And let me tell you, my family does not tolerate deceit of this kind. Martha will have to give some very serious explanations. I could picture the scene at my house perfectly. A desperate Martha trying to explain why there was no food, why the house was a mess, why she didn't know how to cook for the family she had invited. And now, on top of it all, facing an uncle who knew every one of her financial secrets. Elias, I said gently, if I may suggest something. I think it would be good for Martha to face the natural consequences of her actions. She's lived in a bubble of privilege where others always fixed her problems. Maybe it's time she learns what true independence means. I completely agree, he said. In fact, I have some news for her that will drastically change her perspective. Oh, may I ask what kind of news? The supposed financial support she was expecting from the family for her husband's business. Well, that depended entirely on her showing fiscal responsibility and transparency. After seeing these documents and today's chaos, I can assure you there will be no financial support. My smile widened. I understand, I said. But there's more, he continued. My brother-in-law Henry, the one who was going to help them with real estate connections. He's furious too. Apparently, Martha had asked him to evaluate several investment properties, including the house where you live. Did you know about that? That was new. I hadn't realized Martha had gone so far as to ask Henry to appraise my home for sale. The betrayal was deeper than I'd imagined. No, I said slowly. I didn't know that. Well, Henry's furious. He invested time and resources evaluating properties based on false information about Martha's finances. He feels completely deceived, as do we all. I can imagine, I said quietly. Which brings me to my main point, Elias continued. My family has decided that this perfect Christmas will now become a family intervention. Martha will have to explain every lie, every deception, every manipulation. Family intervention. That was even better than I had planned. Not only would Martha face the logistical chaos of no food or decorations, but now she would also be forced to answer for years of lies in front of her entire family. And what about the other relatives? Yes. They're all aware of the situation, Elias said. Grace is already reviewing the financial documents you sent us. Evelyn is calling other relatives to inform them of the real story. By dinner time, everyone will know the truth. And Martha? Well, she doesn't know it yet. But she's about to. I could hear voices rising in the background, the chaos intensifying in my home. Mrs. Susan, I have to go handle this, but please know. My family has immense respect for you. For enduring this for so long, and for having the dignity to walk away when you'd had enough. Thank you, Elias, I said softly. That means more to me than you know. One last thing, he added. When you're ready to come back, we hope to meet you properly. The real Susan, not the maid Martha pretended you were. It will be my pleasure, I said. I hung up and leaned back in my chair, feeling a warm, deep satisfaction spread through me. In my house, Martha's carefully constructed world of lies was collapsing piece by piece, exactly as I had planned. But the best part was still to come. That afternoon, I decided it was time to witness my masterpiece. I hired a discreet chauffeur service and asked to be driven through my neighborhood. Not to intervene, of course, but simply to watch from a safe distance. The beautiful result of years of quiet planning unfolding before my eyes. When we turned onto my street, the scene that unfolded before me exceeded even my most optimistic expectations. 3 cars were parked in my driveway. I immediately recognized them as the rental vehicles belonging to Martha's family. But what truly caught my attention were the dozens of grocery bags scattered across the front porch, clearly abandoned in the middle of some kind of crisis. Stop here, I told the driver, but stay far enough so they can't see us. From my perfect vantage point, I could see figures darting frantically behind the living room windows. Now and then, someone rushed out into the backyard, waving their arms and shouting into a phone. It was like watching a live soap opera. Only this time it was infinitely more satisfying, because I knew all the secrets the characters were about to discover. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mrs. Susan, this is Grace. Could you call me when you have a moment? I need to ask you a few questions about some additional documents. Called immediately. Grace picked up on the first ring. Her voice was tense but professional. Mrs. Susan, thank you for calling. I've been reviewing my sister's financial situation and... well, it's worse than we thought. In what way? Yes. I just discovered she's been using Ryan's name and credit information to open accounts he knows nothing about. This could be considered identity fraud. That was new to me. I had found the secret credit cards, yes, but I hadn't known Martha had gone so far as to use my son's identity without his knowledge. Does Ryan know? We just told him an hour ago. His reaction was intense. I could picture it perfectly. My son, always so meticulous with his finances, finding out his wife had been compromising his credit and reputation behind his back. How is he handling it? I asked quietly. Honestly, he's in shock. He keeps repeating that there must be some mistake, that Martha would never intentionally do something like this. But the documents don't lie. No, I said softly. They never do. Mrs. Susan, Grace continued, I need to ask you something delicate. Did you know that Martha told our family you were planning to make her the main beneficiary of your will? That question hit me like lightning. What? Yes. Martha told us you loved her so much that you were going to leave her the house and a significant portion of your savings. She used that claim as collateral for several of the loans she took. The betrayal ran even deeper than I had imagined. Martha hadn't just lied about her current finances. She had been speculating on my death and using my supposed inheritance to get credit. Grace, I said firmly, I can assure you that's completely false. My will does not include Martha as a beneficiary of anything. I suspected as much, Grace replied, But she used that story to convince some relatives in the US that lending her money was a safe investment. Relatives? Asked stunned. Yes, a few cousins who live in the States. She borrowed over $20,000, using your supposed future inheritance as security. $20,000 in debt. Money I was supposedly going to cover with my death. It was so twisted, so deliberately malicious, that for a moment I was speechless. Do they know the truth now? Asked finally. Yes, said Grace. I'm explaining it to them as we speak. And as you can imagine, they are not pleased. In the background I could hear raised voices, shouting, overlapping, the sound of multiple confrontations erupting at once inside my house. Grace, how is Martha reacting to all these revelations? There was a long pause. She's in complete denial, Grace said at last. She keeps insisting it's all a misunderstanding, that the documents are misinterpreted, that you are being vindictive because you felt left out of the Christmas plans. Course. Even when confronted with undeniable evidence of her lies and manipulation, Martha was still trying to play the victim. And the rest of the family? Yes. How are they taking it? Badly, very badly, Grace admitted. My uncle Elias is furious because he was going to invest in Ryan's supposed business based on completely false information. Evelyn is angry because she had planned to move nearby to be closer to the prosperous, stable family Martha had described. And Henry feels utterly deceived about the property appraisals he did. I could almost see it, the perfect facade collapsing under its own weight. And Christmas? I asked, unable to hide a small, wicked smile. What happened to the big holiday celebration? Grace let out a bitter laugh. What Christmas? Martha ordered pizza for 25 people because she doesn't know how to cook anything else. We're eating off paper napkins because she can't find the good plates. And instead of celebrating, we're having the most intense family confrontation of our lives. Pizza for 25. On the grand Christmas Eve that was supposed to impress the wealthy side of the family. The irony was delicious. You know what's really sad? Grace continued. Martha keeps asking when you're coming back. She still believes she can somehow manipulate you into returning and fixing this whole disaster. And what did you tell her? Yes. The truth, that after 5 years of emotional abuse and manipulation, you finally had the courage to set boundaries, and that we, as a family, respect you for it. I felt warmth spread through my chest. For the first time in years, people finally understood me, finally validated what I had endured. Grace, may I ask, what do you all plan to do now? Some of us are leaving tomorrow. This isn't the family gathering we expected, and honestly, we don't want to be part of the chaos Martha created. But a few of us are staying behind, to make sure she understands the consequences of her actions. What kind of consequences? Ask carefully. Well, for starters, all family loans are being cancelled immediately. She'll have to find a way to pay back what she already borrowed. The financial support for Ryan's business is obviously gone. And we'll have to inform the rest of the extended family about her pattern of lies, to protect them from future manipulation. It was poetic justice. Martha had built her life on a web of deceit and manipulation, and now that web was collapsing spectacularly around her. And Ryan? Asked softly. How is he processing all of this? That's the saddest part, Grace said. I don't think he knew any of it. He's devastated. He keeps saying he thought he married a completely different woman. My poor son. Despite everything, I still felt a pang of sorrow for his confusion and heartbreak. But I also knew this was the only way he'd finally open his eyes to the truth of his marriage. Grace, I said, is there anything else I should know? Only this, she said after a pause. When you come home, and I hope you do soon, I think you'll find everything has changed. Oh, I'll be coming back soon, I said, my voice calm but resolute. When I do, I'll be making some very important changes. Martha would no longer have free access to my house. There would be new rules, new boundaries, and real consequences for disrespect. Perfect, I thought. It's time she learns to live in the real world. I hung up the phone and asked the driver to take me back to the hotel. I'd seen enough for one day. Tomorrow would be my triumphant return. Christmas Eve. The reckoning. The morning of December 24th dawned cold but bright, as if the universe itself had decided to bless my day of victory. I woke up early, packed my bags calmly, and prepared for the final confrontation, the one I had been planning for months. Before leaving the hotel, I made one last call. Roberto, it's Susan. Are all the documents ready? Everything's in order, my lawyer replied. The changes to the will are notarized, the property deed modification is registered, and the new residency agreements are ready for your signature. Perfect. I'll see you at the house in an hour. Are you sure you want to do this on Christmas Eve? He asked gently. Roberto, I said, there's no better time. It's time my family learns the true meaning of gratitude. At 10 a.m., the taxi dropped me at my gate. The rental cars were still there, but the energy in the air was different. Less frantic, more tense. Like the calm before a storm everyone knows is about to break. I opened the front door with my own key. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear muffled voices from the kitchen, but they stopped abruptly when my heels echoed on the marble floor. Susan. Ryan's voice was stunned, almost hopeful. Yes, I said. I'm back. Footsteps rushed toward me from every direction. Ryan appeared first. Dark circles under his eyes, hair disheveled, clearly sleepless for days. Behind him came Martha, but not the Martha I knew. No makeup, wrinkled clothes, eyes swollen from crying. Mom! Ryan stepped forward as if to hug me, but froze when he saw my expression. Thank God you're back, he said. We need to talk. Oh, we will talk, I said coolly. But not alone. At that moment, the rest of Martha's family appeared. Elias, tall and imposing. Grace, clutching a folder full of documents. Evelyn and Henry, their faces etched with disappointment. Mrs. Susan, said Elias respectfully, extending his hand. It's an honor to finally meet you. We're truly sorry it had to be under these circumstances. The honor is mine, Elias, I replied calmly. And don't worry about the circumstances. Sometimes the truth needs a bit of drama to come to light. Martha finally found her voice. Trembling, desperate. Susan, please, we need to clear up this misunderstanding. My family is confused by some documents that apparently... There are no misunderstandings, Martha, I interrupted sharply. There are facts. And it's time everyone heard the full story. The doorbell rang. It was Roberto, my lawyer, right on schedule. Perfect timing, I murmured, walking to open the door. Roberto, thank you for coming, I said. I think we're all ready for the conversation we've avoided for years. He stepped inside, impeccably dressed despite it being Christmas Eve. His professional presence immediately changed the room, adding a weight of authority that made everyone straighten up. Good morning, he greeted smoothly. I'm Roberto Mendoza, Mrs. Susan's attorney. I understand there are some family and financial matters that need clarification. Martha paled. Why is there a lawyer here? Because after 5 years of emotional abuse, financial manipulation, and complete disrespect, I said, my tone glacially calm, I decided I need legal protection. Legal protection? From what? Ryan asked, genuinely confused. From your wife's attempts to use my future death as collateral for loans, I replied evenly. From her plans to convince you to sell my house to pay off her compulsive shopping debts. From her unauthorized use of your credit information. Shall I continue? The silence that followed was absolute. Martha collapsed onto the sofa, finally realizing her world of lies had completely fallen apart. Roberto opened his portfolio. Mrs. Susan, shall we proceed with the presentation of the new documents? Please, I said. The reading. First, Roberto began, the changes to the will. Mrs. Susan has amended her will to ensure that ownership of this house can never be sold or mortgaged without her explicit consent, even after her passing. The property will be transferred to a family trust that protects Ryan's interests but prohibits any form of speculative use. Martha began to sob quietly. Ryan looked shocked, and for the first time, genuinely ashamed. Second, Roberto continued, the new terms of residence. Martha no longer has unrestricted access to this property. Any visits must be requested in advance and approved by Mrs. Susan. Ryan's voice trembled. What exactly does that mean? It means, I said evenly, that your wife can no longer walk into my home whenever she pleases, bark orders about my cooking or my schedule, or assume I'll be her housemaid. Mom, I never knew she. You never knew. Cut in. For 5 years you never noticed that every time you had guests, I did all the work while she took the credit. You never wondered why your wife never cooked or cleaned, yet always bragged about being the perfect hostess. Ryan lowered his head, finally confronting years of willful blindness. Elias stepped forward, his tone heavy with paternal disappointment. Martha, our family gave you opportunities, trust and support, all built on lies. You made us unwitting accomplices in your mistreatment of a woman who deserved our admiration, not our contempt. T.O., I never meant to. Never meant to what? He snapped. Lie about your income. Forge credit. Promise inheritances that weren't yours. Treat your mother-in-law like a servant. Martha had no answer. For the first time in 5 years, she had no manipulation, no excuse, no deflection to hide behind. There's one more thing, I said, locking eyes with her. You will repay every cent you borrowed using my supposed inheritance as collateral. You will personally apologize to every family member you deceived. And you will learn to live within your real means, not the fantasy you built at my expense. And if she doesn't? Grace asked firmly. Then, Roberto said crisply, she'll face the appropriate legal consequences, including charges for identity fraud and fraudulent credit acquisition. He closed his portfolio. The documents are ready for signature whenever you're prepared. I turned to the family gathered in my living room. For 5 years, I said steadily, I sacrificed my dignity believing I was holding this family together. But I've learned something important. A family built on manipulation and disrespect isn't a family at all. It's a toxic structure that harms everyone inside it. I looked directly at Ryan. Son, I love you. But you need to decide what kind of man you want to be. The kind who lets his wife abuse his mother, or the kind who defends respect and honesty in his home. Then I turned to Martha. And you must decide whether you want to be a responsible adult who faces the consequences of her actions, or a manipulative child who expects others to clean up her mess. The clock struck noon on Christmas Eve. Outside, other families were preparing dinners filled with love and mutual respect. Now, I said with the calmest smile I had ever worn, those who wish to stay for a Christmas built on honesty, respect, and true gratitude are welcome. Those who prefer to keep living in lies and fantasy may leave. For the first time in 5 years, I had full control of my house, my life, and my future, and I had never felt a freedom so sweet.